Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Surbiton in southwest London to Richmond Park. This ride takes just 20 minutes and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same trip takes more like 40 minutes, so cycling is a great option. This route might also be useful for people wanting to get the train to Richmond Park to go riding, as Surbiton is one of the closest stations on the South West Main Line. If you find this video useful or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute too, then you can find a link in the description below the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting on Claremont Road just outside Surbiton railway station, and the first thing that we want to do is dive left into the crescent here. For the first part of this route we're going to be following these green and blue signs for Cycleway 29. Today's route runs entirely on infrastructure delivered by Kingston Council. Some of it is quite good, some of it is less good, and we'll talk about that when we get there. It's a pretty good start though. The crescent is very quiet, and in a second we're going to get put onto a decent two-way protected cycle track which carries us alongside this main road without having to interact with traffic. After a bit of a bodge at the junction coming up using a toucan crossing to get over the road, we return to cycling on the main carriageway on Surbiton Crescent. Surbiton Crescent looks like it should be busy, but it's not, thanks to a bus gate at the end of it, which means that only buses and bikes can use it as a through route. As a result, you can see it's pretty clear of cars, and you can see the bus gate sign coming up here. Now, Kingston is far from a terrible place to cycle. It was one of the 3 outer London boroughs given lots of cash to transform their streets as part of the Mini Holland programme, the others being Waltham Forest and Enfield. But there are some issues with the approach that Kingston has taken, I think, which are pretty evident on this street. You'll be cycling along a perfectly good cycle track, and then it'll suddenly turn into a shared pavement. That's fine up to a point or in extreme circumstances where no other design is viable, but Kingston's engineers reach for it as a solution far too often, and the result is like this, where the cycle track is extremely stop and start and you find yourself on shared space sections far too often. That's not great for people on bikes, it's a bit confusing, but it's also not great for people trying to walk on the pavements either, I think. This street that we've been travelling on is a pretty good example of it, but there are some absolute horror shows later in the video that I will flag when we get to them. The important thing, of course, is that you're separated from motor traffic and that the route is safe, which I think is the case, or I wouldn't recommend it. But in the meantime, my advice is to remember to ride gently and be aware of pedestrians when you're on these shared spaces. I don't want to be too negative. We're currently on Kingston Town Centre's inner ring road, and it's great that we can ride safely along here without dealing with traffic and reasonably comfortably. If every other town centre in London had something like this, it would certainly be a good start, and there are also loads of low traffic and segregated routes around here, some of which are quite a bit better than this one. But the design doesn't quite keep pace with some of the more recent cycle schemes you might have seen elsewhere in London and in other videos on this channel. It would be great to see these lanes eventually get a rebuild to properly segregate people cycling from people walking, and to just generally be more compliant with the latest best practice when designing infrastructure like this. Now, in a moment, we're going to be braking from Cycleway 29 and joining Cycleway 30 by turning right down London Road. When we enter London Road, don't forget to keep an eye out for Kingston's iconic red telephone boxes, a sculpture by artist David Mack called Out of Order, which you can see right here, It's been a symbol of Kingston since it was installed in 1989 and is, I think, a lovely example of how public art can improve an area and become well loved. London Road itself is functionally a cul-de-sac, so without through traffic is a pleasant place to cycle. It would probably be a bit nicer if some of the curbside was reallocated from parking to other uses like outdoor dining and planting, and the whole street opened up a bit. C30 does quickly move off the carriageway though and into a segregated cycle track like the one we're on now, which has much the same issues as the previous ones, with the track giving up at various points like here. But overall, if you can deal with that, it's a really useful link. Certainly a lot better than cycling on that busy road to our right, and is also, despite the fact that this was filmed in the mid-morning, been used by a number of other people as well. Do watch out for the lamp posts and other poles which are occasionally situated in the path though, especially if you're doing this route at night. You don't want to cycle into them without seeing them. You should be especially careful on this route as you approach bus stops, as the cycles track basically stops and turns into a shared space at points like here. It would be much better for the cycle track to pass behind the bus stop shelter, like on a bus stop bypass, but that hasn't been done here, partly I think due to space constraints. The section up ahead here turns into a shared pavement for an extended period and is an absolute dog's breakfast. It's always outside petrol stations I find that you'll get the worst infrastructure. I guess because the design of petrol station forecourts relies on having two crossover driveways in quick succession with vehicles regularly turning in and out of them. Things only get worse though on this first section of Kingston Hill here. It's not so bad in the other direction where there's a cycle lane at pavement level, but in this direction it's just a pavement with cycle symbols painted on it. You can see that this wasn't re-engineered because they didn't want to move the mature trees there, and that's understandable, but the result was a very, very bad section. There is then a slightly better cycle track and then another very poor section very briefly, before it does actually turn into quite a decent cycle lane. It actually runs quite well all the way up past Kingston University to where the road meets the A3, and is actually pretty good in both directions. The bad section is just here, and then after that it turns pretty good for the rest of the trip. I do have some plans for videos that will show the cycle lane all the way up to where it stops. So do hit subscribe on the channel if you're keen to see that. Today we are obviously just going to Richmond Park, so we're going to get to the gate of the park there, and yeah, you'll see that it basically continues like this for the whole route, and I'd say it's really not too bad now, verging on actually quite good. It's a shame about those weak points that we went past, and I wish that Kingston Council would fix those, though I understand the physical and political constraints of doing so. But even with those bits, it is miles better going on this than having to cycle up Kingston Hill without a cycle lane. If you couldn't tell from the video, this is actually quite a long and sustained hill, and yeah, this makes a huge difference, so well done to the council for getting this installed. I personally really dislike cycling up hills, and having my own protected cycle lane makes such a difference on them, even more than on the flat, because it's actually less the hill that's horrible I think, and more the feeling that traffic is revving up behind you and about to close past you that you get when you're cycling on the carriageway, whereas you can take your own time when you've got your own segregated lane like this. We haven't had much history in this video, but I do have a little piece of it for you here. Coming up on our right, directly opposite where we're going to be turning off, is a cul-de-sac called Warren Road. We're not going to be cycling up it today, but at the entrance is a memorial plaque to General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who actually lived at Telegraph Cottage on Warren Road from 1942 until 1945, while he was the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe. The original building burned down in the 80s, so there's not much to see, but one was rebuilt in its place and is now a private residence. Now, the first opportunity to get into Richmond Park is coming up on our left here, and we're going to take it. You want to turn left into Ladder Style Ride, which is just here after the zebra crossing. This is a short cul-de-sac that takes you straight into Richmond Park via this gate here, which is just obscured by this van today. Depending on where you want to go in this very big park, you could keep going further up Kingston Hill and actually enter at Robin Hood Gate, but you can also get to Robin Hood Gate traffic free within the park by turning right here and just going straight. But yeah, here we are. We've made it in just 20 minutes without having to deal with traffic at all. I hope that's useful for someone. I know a lot of people like to go leisure or sports cycling in Richmond Park, and Surbiton is right on the main train line in from places like Surrey, so I'm sure someone will make use of it. Do hit subscribe on the channel if you enjoyed that, as I post similar videos every week, including ones to and from Richmond Park sometimes. And do let me know in the comments what you make of the route and what you'd like to see in terms of future videos, perhaps another to the park from somewhere else, or maybe something completely different. Please do leave a like if you enjoyed the video, as it boosts it on YouTube's algorithm and helps other people find it. And I'd also like to once again thank everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. If you're feeling generous and you'd like to throw money at me there, then there's a link in the description below the video. I'll see some of you in the comments, and I'll see the rest of you next time. Goodbye.